and then we'll go ahead and get started. I opened up the wait room so anybody can just hop on in as they arrive. But welcome everybody to the fall 2023 coffee chat with Sigma Ota Epsilon, and we have an awesome guest with us today. We're featuring Dr. Renita Murimi, one of a student favorite professor. All of our students rant and rave about Dr. Murimi. She is a PhD CISSP, and she joined the Good College of Business as an associate professor of cybersecurity in 2019. Dr. Murimi received a PhD and an MS in electrical engineering from New Jersey Institute of Technology and a bachelor's of engineering with distinction in electronics and communications from Manipal University in India. Her research interests are in the areas of computational social science, cybersecurity, blockchain, which she's going to talk about tonight, and network science. When asked, why did you become a professor? She said, to me, academia is a uniquely rewarding vocation. It offers me the opportunity to keep learning, to be in the company of eager, curious minds, and to share what I know with others. And she is doing that with us tonight. So if you don't mind, let's have a round of applause for Dr. Renita Murimi.
Thank you, Sherry. That was very kind of you. Thank you for all the kind words you said, and thank you to everyone who is on the call today and to anyone else who's going to watch the recording later. I appreciate your time on a weekday evening. I know it's difficult to spare time in the middle of the dinner rush and coming back from work or doing schoolwork, so I appreciate the time you're giving me today. All right, so today I'm going to talk about blockchain and food. And before we start, I would like you to take a quick one-question survey. I will put the link in the chat, and it should be up now. So if you can click on that link and answer the very first thing that comes to your mind. You do not have to Google it up or go on Wikipedia and find a technically correct answer. Just something that comes to your mind.
It won't let me submit again, Renita. You can keep my original answer.
Okay, all right. That's fair. So I see 3 so far. Okay, I'm assuming that everyone had a chance to look at the question and answer. One of the, well, because there are only 3 answers that I see so far, I might just share them. I saw logistics, and the second answer was crypto, and the third one was Legos. All valid answers, all related to blockchain. So with that, I think we can start. Sherry, if you don't mind, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
You should be able to now.
Okay. I hope you can all see. Okay, thank you. All right. When you think of blockchain, I'm thinking that the words crypto, logistics, Legos that came to your mind are because you read something about blockchain and you saw some applications. In today's talk, I'm not going to talk about the technical aspect of it. The technical aspect is a 1 semester or a 2 semester course. It's dear to my heart because of my interest in networks. And blockchain essentially is a really big network, sequentially arranged in the form of blocks. Each block is chained to another block cryptographically. And that cryptographic chaining gives some assurance that the previous block or the current block has not been tampered with. So if you inductively say that over and over again, this block has not been tampered and the next block has not been tampered. You keep saying that until you reach the end of the chain. You can assure yourself that the entire chain has not been tampered with. And in doing so, you have what we call as the assurance of integrity. Whatever data is stored in the block has not been tampered with, so it acts like a tamper-proof ledger. Blockchain essentially is really a ledger. It's a record-keeping mechanism, and it is, I like to point out that it is a mechanism. It's not the only mechanism as we think about Web 3.0 and all of the acronyms. Many times when people are talking about the need for blockchain, sometimes the answer is, and a Microsoft database would do, a spreadsheet would do. You do not have to always invest in blockchain because it's not the only solution to keep records. Okay, so let us start. Today's talk, the content of it is coming from an article I wrote for Medium 2 or 3 years ago, and from a talk I gave to the Korean Maritime Council 2 years ago on blockchain and seafood distribution. So the content is coming from both of those sources, and I had a lot of fun today afternoon coming up with a design scheme for this slides. Intentionally, I've put a picture of some kind of food on every slide. My hope is that when you finish with my talk, you run to your kitchen or the nearest DoorDash app that you have installed somewhere, and you eat something that you've been craving. Okay, so that's my hope for you all, that regardless of what you think about blockchain, your views about whether it's necessary or not, but the pictures of food, I've spent a lot of time curating them. Okay, so let's start. We did this, what comes to mind? I read a few of your responses, and I must say that they're all relevant and they all speak to different applications of blockchain. Now, I told you a little bit about blockchain. Blockchain is a big ledger. It's distributed, meaning there's not just one copy of it. All entities, all computers, all nodes have a copy of the entire chain at any point in time. And we just spoke about how the chain is made up of tamper-proof blocks. So if you have a copy of the chain and you want to query it, you want to say, what happened on November 15th, 2021, in this particular transaction from node A to node B, it will tell you the time, the two participating entities, how much was, if it's a currency related transfer, how much currency was transferred. If it was just a record, maybe a child was born and the city has now started storing everything on blockchain, it will give you records, the kind of records that you might be willing to put on the chain because it's tamper proof, right? You cannot go back and say, oh, let's just erase this. You'll have to initiate a whole different kind of transaction to change something on the chain. Very few people think of blockchain and food. Many times the first thing that comes to mind is Bitcoin, and rightfully so. The technology for blockchain did not just erupt. Although the first application of Bitcoin happened in 2008, in the past 2 decades, steady work has been done on hashes and cryptography. So the technology has been moving forward. In fact, the first viable application of blockchain was in preventing spam. And that's another whole lecture or a talk, and we will get to that if you have questions or later offline. But in the wake of the 2008 financial fiasco, where a bunch of banks went under and poor governance, this entity called Satoshi Nakamoto posted a white paper. Now, this is interesting. He posted I say he, I don't know if it's he or she or an organization, nobody knows about that entity. Some claim he's one of the existing crypto folks, the cryptographers. Others claim he's one of the tech entrepreneurs. Some others say it was not a single person, but rather a group of people who worked together. We still don't know yet. But um, Satoshi Nakamoto posted this white paper. And a white paper, the choice of white paper is interesting because in academia, we usually publish in journals and conferences, there's peer review. And then once things are actually published, the publisher holds the rights to our work. Unless you can post it on your own personal website for free, but otherwise your library has to pay for access. So what I'm trying to say, it's hidden behind a paywall. But when you post it as a white paper, everybody has access to it. So Satoshi really was not in it for the fame or for the monetary rewards. He just wanted to make an idea public, an idea behind which he had so much conviction. So in his white paper, he said that here is, I am saying he again, excuse my pronoun. I just don't know who that Satoshi person is. So what he was saying is that this is a mechanism that does not need governments, it does not need regulation, it does not need extensive vetting or third-party intermediaries, but this is a mechanism in which currency, computational currency or tokens can be generated, can be transferred just like money. And it was the first public application that really entered mainstream conversation and people got behind it. And to date, it remains one of the most famous applications, although many other applications of blockchain exist that have nothing to do with money. Like I said, some are just for record keeping. I know that some countries like Liechtenstein have modified their entire constitution to say that blockchain is the way in which everything has to be tokenized and turned into assets. People's rights, freedoms, property, all kinds of assets can be tokenized. Blockchain is used for many different kinds of applications. Today's talk, we're just going to look at how it's helping in the food distribution sector around the world. Now, food is a universal experience. We can all relate to it. Maybe we don't have the same tastes in food, but there's something that we all like. And the way I think of food is it's an easy way to be happy 3 times a day. If you put enough thought into it and you really curate what you are going to eat morning and afternoon and evening, you look forward to it. And any big event in your life, you celebrate with food. Any sad event also, you're looking forward to, okay, what can I eat to feel better? At least that's me. Okay, so let's move on about how blockchain can be used for food distribution. But before that, some trivia. When Bitcoin first started, people did not know much about it, and it was still viewed as a shady side currency that's just a big scam. There's this one person called Laszlo. I don't know how you say his last name. I'll just say Laszlo. He posted on a forum that he'd like a couple of pizzas, and he was mining Bitcoin by that time. He was one of the early adopters of Bitcoin mining, and he saw promise in it, but he did not see enough. Let me say that. So he said, if someone can deliver 2 pizzas to my door, I'll pay them 10,000 Bitcoins, 2 large ones. And a guy by the name Jeremy Sturdivant took him up on his offer, and he paid 25 for the pizzas and received 10,000 Bitcoins from Laszlo in exchange. This was in 2010. And at that time, 10,000 Bitcoin was around $41. Now it's more than 500 million USD. To commemorate this very funny and, kind of a sad, like dark humor kind of event, May 22nd is informally celebrated in Bitcoin circles and crypto circles as Bitcoin Pizza Day. Okay, so some trivia. And I hope you enjoy the nicely curated set of images I've started showing you on my slides. Okay, let me also move to presentation. Okay, so let's look at use cases from 6 domains. All 6 domains relate to food distribution. The first one is Grain Chain. Grain Chain is actually a company in South Texas, and they use blockchain to help farmers avoid the intermediaries. In blockchain for commerce, there is the concept of smart contracts. A smart contract is just like a contract. Contract law is, I heard last week at the UD Cyber Summit that contract law is the biggest body of law. I did not know that, but in hindsight, it does make sense. When you sign a rental apartment, when you sign the lease for the rental apartment, when you enter into any kind of agreement, you're entering into a contract which is legally enforceable. Now, the same is true with smart contracts, except here it's not a human being or an organization that you're contracting with. For example, let's say I want to purchase a car, and the car is an asset. It's stored on the chain. This asset has a price of maybe $30,000. And the two entities engaged in this transaction, myself and the seller, we are also on the chain. So I am maybe node A and the seller is node B. And then it's just like a Venmo, or Cash App or one of those many money transfer apps. My bank account is connected to my node address on the chain, same for the seller. When the money is transferred from my account to the seller's account, the contract will check it, which is fairly easy to check, correct? Now that we know how to transfer money electronically, those apps also do that for us. And it will alert us if we're attempting to transfer $1,000 when we only have 900 in it. It will attempt to tell us that you don't have enough funds, or if we have overdraft, something will kick in to compensate for the shortfall. But the code will check if I have the funds, and after transferring the funds, if the seller received the funds, and once that has been done, it will electronically transfer the deed or the title from the seller to me, and it will be stored on the chain in my account. Alongside that, now how does the car get transferred, right? Somebody's got to drive it. So let's assume that the car is a smart car or some other kind of car whose ignition can be controlled electronically. So the moment that the transfer has been verified and I have the title, the keys will unlock and the asset has been transferred, not just on the chain, but also in the physical world. So that's an example of a smart contract. And in practice, many kinds of smart contracts are already being implemented. In grain chain, the producer and buyer of the grain, they decide. So this is what you can visualize on the chain, what's being stored in each block. If it's a cryptocurrency transfer, then it's currency, it's node address, it's funds, things like that. If it is grain chain, I'm assuming that it is quantity of grain and type of grain, and I don't know, maybe the variety of grain that's being transferred from one person or one organization to another, the dates and other kinds of logistics, batch number and things like that. So if you think of it, it eliminates the need for human beings at any stage. Maybe the farmer just drives her truck over to this distribution center, and then the weight of the grain is recorded and immediately transferred onto the blockchain. Once it's transferred onto the blockchain along with other attributes, the type, the kind, variety, and all of that, the blockchain can track its transfer from one entity to another, from one organization to another, up to the point where it gets sold. So you even know who bought it and at what price. And the farmers get paid in real time, just like electronic money transfer is being done. The thing with cryptocurrency is many cryptocurrency exchanges are able to convert it in real time to US dollars. So you might have this much Bitcoin, but if you want to convert it to USD, you can do that and get paid in real time. Or you can leave it as tokens on the chain and use it for further transactions. So this is, I think, a great example of how blockchain is used in agriculture. It eliminates the need for third-party intermediaries. The next example is that of not just one entity, but really a whole collection. IBM, it has been one of the early developers and adopters of blockchain. And in collaboration with Walmart, they developed a blockchain for tracking produce. And the motivating factor was these recurrent outbursts of E. coli in leafy vegetables and other kinds of produce. And they want to be able to track very granularly which farm, which lot, which day, and that way they do not have to issue a nationwide recall to bring back all the boxes of a certain item, which is which whenever I see those recalls, I think about the logistical nightmare it poses for the sellers, the vendors, the producers, having to recall so much and the financial impact of it. But if you have something that says just this one batch was contaminated, it's much easier to say, okay, this is the Walmart in Irving or in Grapevine, Texas, that needs to pull back its items instead of saying nationwide recall. Right, so food safety was the driver behind it, but ultimately they did realize that so much more can be achieved, and that collaboration is ongoing. Nestle, I don't know if you're familiar with their products, but I think, and I might be wrong, their biggest product worldwide is their coffee and tea, like, so malt and dairy products. But their blockchain is to track the journey of coffee beans. Now, I don't drink coffee, but I know people who do, and they're passionate about the flavors, the notes, the specific types of coffee, the sustainable ones, or the ones that are grown in certain areas of the world. So there's Kenyan coffee and Guatemalan coffee. So how do you know which one's which? Not everyone can be as discerning of the flavor from the taste of it. So it helps if the packaging is appropriate. And so Nestle's blockchain tracks the journey of coffee beans grown around the world. Same for the Malaysian Palm Oil Council's blockchain. They have blockchains to track how palm oil moves around the world. It's an additive in so many different things, not just cooking, but also in soaps and lotions and all kinds of products. So understanding how the product moves from its raw form to its finished form and where it's being used gives a great amount of transparency to the producers, to the farmers who make it, and who often receive a very low compensation for their product. But when it's in these high-end products, it's sold for ridiculous amounts of profit. So when we have these kinds of blockchain, it's important to know that we cannot view it. So I cannot go online to some site and say, I want to look at IBM's blockchain with Walmart or Nestle's or the Malaysian Palm Oil Council's blockchain. These are what we call as consortium blockchains or private blockchains. I mean, they're two different kinds, but these are private blockchains developed by companies for a specific purpose. Now, this is in contrast to the Bitcoin or the Ethereum blockchain, which are public blockchains. I can go view anyone's records all the way back to the very first block. I can query that chain. I can participate in that chain. I can stake assets. I can buy, sell, mine. I can do anything I want on a public chain. On a private chain, it's just like the examples that I've shown you here. It's developed for an application, and everything is closed to the public except to the participating entities, vendors, suppliers, producers, buyers, those kinds of folks. Okay, the next one is from India. This example is from India. It's called the Akshay Patra Foundation, and it is in Bangalore, India. The problem that they're trying to tackle is hunger and malnutrition, and the way they're doing it is by looking at school meals. It is by their estimate, the world's largest meal program for children run by an NGO, and they partnered with Accenture Labs. So you see the pattern here. Walmart partnered with IBM, and Akshay Patra partnered with Accenture. So you need a business case or a problem that you're trying to solve. In this case, hunger and malnutrition. In Walmart's case, food safety. In some other case, sustainability. And then you need a technology provider. If you are not able to develop it yourself, you need a technology provider who can develop this application for your use case. And what they did is they incorporated all kinds of technology. It was not just blockchain, it was AI-enabled applications. IoT stands for Internet of Things, and an Internet of Things applies to traditional things that we think do not have the functionality to go online, but now they do. So, for example, a smart cat litter box, a smart egg tray, a smart light bulb, a smart toothbrush. These are traditionally things that would not need access to the internet. But under some use case, it's helpful for them to be online for users to program them and run them remotely. And so they're all now what we call the big network of IoT devices. And they use both AI and IoT devices in the entire life cycle of meal preparation and meal delivery for students during their school lunches. And it tracks supply chain logistics. If a certain school has or a school district has a given menu for a year, who are the suppliers, and it's not left to the chef's whim to say, okay, this is all I have in my pantry today, so this is what the kids are eating. But if it's planned, then you have suppliers, you have vendors, and then you're also able to do the financial aspect of school lunches entirely online. And now, because it's blockchain, everything is stored in the chain, so it's tamper proof. So the biggest thing is it eliminates manual feedback from schools. Schools are busy just on their own teaching and doing everything they need to do to educate our children. And one less thing for them to worry about because of solutions such as this is manual feedback for school lunches and lunch preparation and compliance and things like that. The next example is that of wasted food. Now, this is something we all encounter. We have the best intentions when we go get groceries or we go buy our food, and then we come back home, we eat some, we leave some in the refrigerator, and after a few days we discover it and we realize it doesn't look good or taste good, and we feel bad, but you can't eat bad food, so what do? You just waste it. So there's this company called Gooder, and their problem that they're trying to address is mismanaged resources in food distribution, or in short, wasted food. Some statistics from their website: every year in the United States, 72 billion pounds of edible food is wasted, and 42 million people suffer from food insecurity. So if you match these in some way, there is potential to eliminate the problem of food insecurity, or eliminate. I think so. If 42 million people are given 72 billion pounds of food, I think that will mostly eliminate the problem of food insecurity and food waste. Or at the very least, we can mitigate it down to a minimal amount. They use blockchain technology to keep records of what kind of food is wasted in businesses. So maybe it's a catering firm and they cater for large events. So the kinds of food that are wasted there are different from, let's say, fast food restaurants or some other kind of organization that sees a lot of food being prepared and sold or delivered and then wasted. And community connections who could use the food. So by keeping records, meticulous records of what kind of food coming from which location and who needs it, all they do is they charge the businesses for delivery and distribution, and the organizations who receive it just receive it for free. Now, this UN World Food Program, this one, along with one of my friend, co-author, also UD professor, his name is Brett Bourbon, we wrote a paper on this. We started thinking about it, and then it eventually turned into its own paper, where we're talking about blockchain, not from the perspective of advanced countries looking to jump on to the latest technology, but from the point of view of people who have been shut out of traditional systems. All over the world, there are many people who do not have access to the banking system just because they do not have an ID. Many people do not have access to the land that they have been living on, and in which their families have been raised for generations, just because they do not have the title or the deed or a birth certificate to prove that they are who they say they are. So the UN World Food Program is the largest organization delivering cash for humanitarian causes, and they started a pilot program in Pakistan where they said, let us see how we can use blockchain to transfer funds, because the traditional banking system is ridiculously expensive when it comes to transferring money. Their pilot program was successful, and then they took that pilot program to a refugee camp in Jordan. And at this refugee camp, the refugees who were living at that camp, before this program, they would be given cash vouchers. And with these vouchers, they can come by once every week. And depending on the size of their family, they can receive food allotments for the week, or toiletries, soap and lotion and detergent, things like that. So they're not given the actual money, they're given vouchers, and these vouchers have been pre-populated, and they're serviced by local banks. Now, what they were facing is a lot of time. So the banks will require IDs. When you go to open a bank account, they're going to ask you for I don't know, 3 forms of ID, and fill out all these different forms. But that is a problem in and of itself. But when it comes to a refugee, where are they going to find that birth certificate or that license to prove who they say they are? Many of them do not have the resources. And I read a recent report that I think 60% of children born in the refugee camps do not have a birth certificate, because they do not simply have the resources to go to town and record a birth. And in developed countries, the lack of a birth certificate means you're shut out of so many different um, traditional systems: education, finance, government records. So what they did is they said, let's try this blockchain solution that does not require an intermediary bank or a financial institution, and all of the money is stored in the form of cryptocurrency on the chain. Every person is uniquely identified with the help of a blockchain address. And how do you authenticate yourself? How do you say who you say you are? Is iris scans. So they use iris scans. Now, to those of you who are familiar with iris scans, the technology, or you might have seen it in those James Bond kind of movies, and he looks into the scanner and then they let him proceed to the next hurdle to, get the diamonds or some kind of, I don't know, asset. So in iris scans, irises are unique, and no two people in the world have the same iris, even twins. And the uniqueness of the iris comes from its development inside the womb. The development of the human individual proceeds in such a way that when it comes to the iris, we really don't know what contributes to the pattern it has. And when you don't know what inputs produce what outputs, that whole field of science is called chaos theory, and iris development is a prime example of chaotic development. By chaos, I don't mean destruction, mess, and all around uncertainty. It just means we don't know which combination of inputs produces what kind of output. So the iris is extremely valuable for authentication. It's a great way to authenticate yourself when you don't have any other form, like a birth certificate or an ID. So they use biometric technology of the iris scans and blockchain to keep records of which family got how many resources every week. And in doing so, their costs of administration of this program came down to, they achieved 98% of savings, because they eliminated the financial transaction fees, and it was extremely convenient for the refugees too. to participate in such a distribution of resources in the refugee camp. And the last one that I want to talk about is seafood distribution. This is the one that I will spend a little more time on because there's just so much on seafood distribution that and the industry in general has embraced blockchain very eagerly. So there are a lot more resources to talk about here. Now, when it comes to seafood distribution, we can use blockchain for monitoring, for analytics, for logistics. Some examples that I will present to you are that of fish coin. For those of you who took my data protection class in the final exam, you might have remembered something small about fish coin and you're wondering what on earth this one is. But I'll talk some more about fish coin. We looked at IBM and Walmart's collaboration in the food safety supply chain. But here, this one is with seafood, specifically seafoods. It's called Raw Seafoods. So their chain is called Food Trust. And we'll look at some challenges of using blockchain for seafood distribution. But before that, I want to keep track of time because I can talk forever. Okay, it's 7:10, 7:11. Okay, all right. In blockchain, the simplest element or the fundamental element is the block. What are we going to store on the block? Even in bigger public chains such as Bitcoin or Ethereum, the size of a block is just a few bytes. Not much can be stored on the block. Of course, with private chains, we do not have the lag or the time, the amount of time that's spent going from input to output is the time lag. So when I enter a transaction, for it to be recorded on the chain, for it to be approved by the nodes and stored in the ledger, that takes a lot of time in public chains. But that's not the case with private chains because the number of nodes are few. So in seafood distribution, the question is, what should we store on the chain? And the answer is a lot. We can store a lot about the chain. We can store information about the ocean. Where are these species of fish being farmed from or caught from? Is it a small fishery, a large fishery, the fleet, the type of fish? I read some statistic that said about 50% of the fish that we see in the grocery store and that is labeled a certain way is not that fish after all. And most of us do not know enough about the fish to say, this is not really this kind of tuna, this is another kind of tuna, or maybe even a different species. So we just take the grocers at their word and we say, okay, we'll get this particular fish. So there is a lot of mislabeling happening in the seafood industry. I'm not certain that it's intentional, but it does happen. So that is another big use case for blockchain and seafood. So if the fisherman or fisherwoman has labeled a certain fish as being of a certain variety, that is now stored on the chain. That is what gets printed on the label, on the packaging, all the way from the vessel to the plate. That fish is just that, and the name hasn't changed. Okay, so fisheries produce more than 90 million pounds of seafood every year, and it's a big industry. In fact, the whole economy of fisheries is called the blue economy, and it sustains a lot of people. I know here in Texas, I haven't seen that size of the blue economy impacting the regular Texas economy. But where I am from originally, I'm from the southwest coast of India, and we're half an hour from the ocean. So fishing and the sound of the ocean, I can still hear it in my mind. But that's a big part of our culture, of our economy, and it's a daily part of our cuisine. So, and I think that's true of many coastal regions around the world. And the challenges to fishing, as we all know, climate change, illegal fishing, suboptimal fishery operation, wherein if it's good weather, the fishing vessels are out on the water and we have a good catch. Well, what does a good catch mean? It means that there is less for the next season. So sustainable fishing operations are important. And the way you do this is by monitoring. Monitoring gives us a lot of data about the kinds of fish, the sensors, what is the weight of a certain catch, and how much of that catch is good, how much has to be released back into the ocean because it's not the kind of fish that we are looking for. And there is a lot of auditing and compliance when it comes to sustainable fishing. I will share the slides with Sherry, and all of these are links that you can click on. Honestly, I think that this is a great way to learn something. If you're wondering what is the Copernicus project, it's an ocean monitoring project. There are ocean cleanup projects. The NOAA has an extensive project running for many years called EcoCast. It's satellite imaging that's made available for fisheries so they can track better where to, in the Bible, where should I cast my net? So here it is, the satellite imaging program saying, go here or go there. The weather is nice, the weather is not so optimal, and so on. Deep sea mining, this is the Midas project. The ocean floor is sitting on a lot of valuable minerals and materials that could power our technologies and provide fuel even. So how do you get there, and where are those locations? The Midas project is working on that. And of course, saving species from overfishing, pollution, accidental catches. Now, as you're looking at these applications, as you're hearing me talk about that, one thing to remember is that all these applications generate a lot of data. And preserving this data in a tamper-proof format is important for many reasons. Blockchain fits right into any of these solutions because it has this ability to provide distributed data storage, right? There's not just one node that has a central copy. It's distributed data storage, it's tamper-proof, and anyone can participate with the appropriate permissions. Sustainable fishing is part of the UN 2030 SDGs. For those of you who are not familiar, SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. I think it's an incredible set of goals to get behind. Any organization can be a part of it. Not all goals have to be pursued. Maybe an organization can just get behind one goal and make conscious efforts to improve their operations toward that goal. And okay, here's the blue economy that I talked about. So the logistics tools, there's an organization called SALT. It stands for Seafood Alliance for Legality and Traceability. And it traces fishing vessels, trips, fishery management, compliance, and interoperable infrastructure. So if one fishery uses a certain kind of technology and another fishery uses another kind, how do we get these two technologies to talk? Because ultimately maybe one is a vendor for another or is somewhere in the supply chain linked to each other. At the bottom, I have a report. This is a full chain seafood traceability report from 2017. And when Sherry shares the slides, you should be able to click on it and read the entire report. It's not very technical, but it gives you a good picture of how much technology and especially how much blockchain is involved in the seafood distribution challenge. Fishcoin is one such example. It has it addresses the problem of traceability, and it rewards fishers and farmers for sharing information. Many times you might have information, and that is true of cybersecurity too, of the field I teach and do some research in. We have information, but we don't know how to share it, or we don't want to share it, and everybody suffers in the meanwhile. So Fishcoin has explicit incentives for fishers and farmers to share traceability data. So if you caught 10 pounds of sardines, for example, share that, put it on the chain, just put that data in there so somebody else downstream can read that data and benefit from it. It also rewards everybody else. It's just like playing video games. When you do certain activities, you're building the network, you're encouraging friends to join the system, and then you get some reward points with which you can buy a sprite or some other character on the in that video game platform, right? So Fishcoin has been organized just like that. This is the IBM Food Trust partnership that I spoke about earlier. This is just for scallops. The company called Raw Seafood saw a 30% increase in their sales, and by using this particular kind of blockchain. And the image that they're trying to portray is your seafood has a story, and this is the story. And you can write that story really nicely because you have all this data on the chain: when it was caught, by whom, like by which company, how many distribution facilities it passed through, and now it's on your plate, right? So this is the story of seafood. There's also a blockchain application for tuna, and this is from New Zealand, and it targets the fresh and frozen tuna market. And I don't know much about tuna, um, but I've read and I've watched some documentaries about the specialty tuna that's fished and and shipped in an express manner from the cold Pacific Ocean waters to our tables. And that because of that, there is a lot of incentive for people to cheat, to not report what they caught, to misreport what they caught, to do it illegally. And that whole industry, that malicious side of the industry, is called the IUU. It stands for illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Once again, blockchain can help mitigate many of those issues. So the summary of my talk today is that blockchain can help. It's not just for seafood. In any kind of tracking and distribution and logistics, it can provide traceability. It can, because it provides traceability, it gives you information about sustainability. If you have already harvested everything that is from a certain portion of the farm, what is left for next year? Do we have data about that? If not, we can prepare ourselves for a lower yield season next season. And distributed governance, everybody has a stake in it, because from the fishers to the farmers, it is those individuals who have the data. So distributed governance means that they have a voice in how profits are to be made and distributed over this platform. Now, some questions. Like I said at the very beginning, blockchain is not the only solution. Sometimes a spreadsheet would do. But if you do choose to adopt blockchain, the questions you have to ask are: what is your specific business need? What is the need that you're targeting? And what impact will blockchain have if adopted? And what kind of data to store on the blockchain? Most of the work, for those of you in technology and use case development, project development, you know that most of the work starts way before the implementation. Thinking through the problems, thinking through what is important and what is trivial takes up a lot of time, and not many individuals or organizations are willing to invest. They just want to get their hands dirty and start working. But thinking through the problem carefully is important. Also, interoperability. Like I said, there are public chains, private chains, consortium chains, a whole range of companies developing chains. Whose chain are you going to partner with if you don't know how to develop it yourself? And stakeholder buy-in. So let's say you come up with this really fancy blockchain for farmers or fishers or some other kind of stage one developer, and they're not willing to enter their data, or maybe the compliance body does not see the benefit in blockchain. So then there is no stakeholder buy-in, and it's difficult to tell people how this technology is important. So that is it. I spoke fast just to leave some time for questions. But thank you for listening to me. And here is another picture of some food, actually coffee, empty coffee cup, to end my presentation. And I'll take any questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Renita. That was so good. I know I wrote down a ton of notes about blockchain, know nothing about it. I was the one that said Legos is what I thought of when I hear blockchain. The one question that I had was about, what sort of advice would you give a manager, project manager, a service-oriented manager, in regards to blockchain and how we can use it in our everyday work. But you kind of mentioned, what kind of industry are you in? What kind of company are you? Thinking carefully about what problems you have and what applies. That blockchain doesn't always apply to every situation, but That's good advice. That's really good advice. Just a moment ago, you mentioned partnering with other chains to kind of, piggyback off of what they do versus kind of creating your own chain. Where would one look to kind of figure out what chain might work best for your particular industry?
Okay, so it comes down to the kind of data that you want to work with. If it's financial data that you don't mind people taking a look at. So, for example, if I want to work with Bitcoin, maybe next year onward, we can convince President Sanford to pay us all in Bitcoin, right? So he and his executive team would have to find out how to take our fiat money, that's what we call regular money, fiat money, how to take that money and convert it into Bitcoin, and which bank would be willing to service that kind of conversion, and what are the tax implications, what are the regulatory implications, all those kinds of things. So it comes down to what do you want to store on the chain. If it's money, you're thinking about a cryptocurrency application. If it's data, you're going to think about a specific sector. So, for example, there is an automobile alliance blockchain called Mobi. And what they do is they store data about automobile parts. Apparently, I don't know much about automobiles. I just know how to drive, that too barely. But so their blockchain stores information about the parts used in automobiles and the logistics of transporting them from one facility to another anywhere in the world. And so it comes down to the kind of data that you want to store, and then finding vendors. So IBM is a trusted vendor, and I'm sure there are many others. I know Accenture has developed some applications. Uh, I I thought that Facebook was developing some cryptocurrency called Libra, but that didn't gain much momentum after all the scandals it has been fighting against. So it comes down to the companies that have expertise in developing such applications. You will have to do an extensive, like a RFP, request for proposals, or RFI, request for information, to find out, okay, I need a blockchain. You say you have the expertise to develop a blockchain for me. Show me what you've done. And then it's an extensive process taking at least a few years to determine right fit, but it's very much sector based.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How much money would you say is in the industry for a blockchain? Like, what would you call someone who works in blockchain only? Would they be like a blockchain specialist? I mean, it's probably a really ignorant question, but just to
Oh, no,
ask,
not at
could you
all.
work, could you
No,
work in the
I'm glad.
blockchain industry?
Yes, well, I'm glad you asked. So, there are different levels, or not levels, I should say, different areas of blockchain that one could work in. The most common kind of application, job opening, I should say, is that of a blockchain developer writing the code, because ultimately this is all in code. There is no hardware unless it comes down to mining, and that is a whole other thing. But if you want to work as a blockchain developer, you need to have strong coding skills. There are specific programming languages now that have been developed just for blockchain. Although initially Bitcoin was done with the language called C. Um, but now the industry has evolved to a point where there are blockchain specific programming languages, and they look for some kind of experience in those. That's on the development side. And then as you move further up the ladder, maybe you have experience in project management. Maybe you've done some blockchain work for a few years, and now you know how to take a business case and translate it to a blockchain application. So there is that. And another big area is that of regulation and compliance. Blockchain for the most part is unregulated. Countries around the world are trying their best to put it in some compartment. Is it currency? Is it code? Is it asset? What is it? It's difficult to modify existing law and existing frameworks to say, here's a here's an intangible asset. Well, it's money. You can't touch it, feel it. You don't really know where it is. So there is a big segment of jobs that's devoted to regulation and compliance. Find out if we are compliant. Although the law doesn't exist, although technology has moved way ahead of the law in many jurisdictions when it comes to blockchain, what can we do so that in the future we are not going to be held liable for violating certain clauses, or just not doing the right thing? So those are the three kinds of jobs that I know of. And for blockchain programming, they're paid just like regular programmers. So I'm assuming in anywhere between like 120 to 250K. That would, because it's a very specialized kind of programming. And then as you go into project management and compliance, I'm assuming that the returns are higher.
That's wonderful. It sounds like all good things that you could learn here at the University of Dallas. It's another job opportunity with your degree that you get here.
Yes.
Corey, did you have a question?
Yeah. So I was looking at some cybersecurity projects that you could do at home using blockchain, and one that caught my attention here was device authentication access control. So my question is like, okay, you could do that with Python, right? And so it's saying you could do that with blockchain. Is there like an advantage that blockchain offers? Or like you said, you don't always need to use blockchain. You could just use Excel or whatever. So is this one of those cases?
I think so, but the flip side is, what is, you use the word applications. I want to find a different word. But what I'm trying to say is, where is this authentication going to be used? And what are you trying to prove to somebody? So, for example, if this is in law enforcement and you're trying to prove that the assets you recovered from someone's house, the ones that law enforcement sees, a computer, some hard drives, some phones, and I don't know, other things that they seized from someone's home. And now they've brought it to their headquarters, to their imaging lab, to find out what was stored on these devices so that they can build up a profile of the suspect and bring it to court. Now, the way it works is, whatever they seized or whatever information they got from the suspect's house has to be the exact same information that's going to be presented in court. Along the way, even if a single bit changes, the entire case can be thrown out, no matter how hard the prosecutor's team has worked on it. The way they do it is by hashing. So they hash the drives, and the same hash has to be obtained on the day that they present in court. Now, for this kind of solution, it's important to say that no one entered the imaging lab room except persons A, B, and C. And how can we prove that? It's on the blockchain, and blockchain is tamper-proof. So that is one way I can think of. Another thing is maybe vaults, where there is, I don't know, some jewelry, intellectual property, the secret recipe for Coca-Cola, KFC. So you get what I'm trying to convey. Maybe there is some information that's stored and you want to prove that access to that was limited. And how do you prove that? Every time a person swipes their badge to enter their room, it's stored in the blockchain. And you can say, because blockchain's tamper-proof, this record's tamper-proof, and nothing has the information here has not been revealed to people who do not need access to it. So those are some applications I can think of when it comes to authentication. So Python is great. I mean, it's been working well for countless applications in different sectors, but it does not give you the property of tamper-proof authentication. So that's where I would think of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Michael, Annette? We're about 4 minutes over 7:30. So in the interest of time, if you don't have any other questions.
I'm looking at the chat. And I like your comments about food. I'm sure you're all hungry.
Yes. So hungry.
Let me
No,
stop here.
I was thinking about what you said about fish, and I noticed that one time at the grocery store that they're like, "Oh, this is Alaskan salmon," and I was like, "No, this isn't. This is catfish. Like I'm from, this is
Oh,
not
okay.
right."
See,
No,
so that worked for you because you're able to tell to someone like me. I'd only see the difference after I ate it.
yeah,
They taste different.
I can look at it and tell the coloring of the fish too. Like the more a fish you eat, the more you'll be able to tell.
That's true. Yeah, you couldn't fool my parents with mislabeled fish. They'd be able to call your bluff really fast. But with me, I only know two kinds of fish, tilapia and salmon. Anything else you tell me trout, I'll say okay. Tell me it's scallops or mussels or clams, I don't know the difference between them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Michael says he's too much of a novice that with this to ask intelligent questions. I ask how much they pay. That's what I want to know.
Those are good questions. And in my classes, if you've been in my classes, you've heard me say another thing a whole lot. Awareness is the first step in any complex problem. You don't need the solution, you just need to be aware of it.
Yeah,
Once that seed is planted, you start thinking, okay, what's wrong here? How can I modify something, change something? It might not work. Those questions might not even lead you down the right path. But awareness is the first step, and not just in blockchain or SIE, but in any complex situation. Just being aware of the problem is a first step to change.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Murimi, for being with us tonight. I think this is a great event and we learned so much about blockchain. I'm going to be Googling a few of those things. I'm going to send out the presentation as soon as I get it from Dr. Murimi with the links, and the recording goes up on our SIE YouTube. If you don't know, we do have a YouTube channel with a lot of the videos from, initiations and things like that, but I'll share that as well. But thank you all for attending and have a good night.
Thank you, Sherry.
Bye.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Dr. Remy.
Thank you.
Bye.